Good evening.
Evening.
My name is Darren, and I teach the yoga class here at Grace Cathedral. And I have to say, my mom would be mortified that I'm standing here. When I was in high school and going through confirmation, she sort of made me go to church, and I hated it, and I rebelled against it. And so when she made me go through confirmation in the Catholic tradition, I volunteered to do a reading. And she said, I wanted you to go, just not up front. So here I am. If you could have seen through a crystal ball what my future would hold, you wouldn't have believed it. And certainly I would not have believed it. So I come here every Tuesday night and I teach yoga. And at first it was just a handful of people coming. And little by little that grew in size. And I started to see certain themes emerge as a result of the yoga practice here, both within myself, but also within the students that come. And the students are very diverse. So it's not just one kind of student. It was everyone, the young, the old, the people who are fit, the people who are not so fit. I started to hear these stories as people would come up to me after yoga and share about these moving experiences where they start crying or would say, I never thought I'd come back to church again, and here I am back in church standing on my head. And so I've done a lot of thinking about this, like what exactly is happening, this sort of non sequitur between this ancient Eastern practice called yoga and this Western tradition called Christianity and a Christian church. They, on the surface, seem to have nothing in common. But as I've reflected on it more and more, I think that you can see this direct line between the two. So the way I understand this is a little story from my life. I promised Ellen that I would not use any vulgarities as I spoke tonight, so I'm going to church this one up. So I live out in the Sunset, not a particularly high crime area, but I cycle. I love to cycle. It's yoga, cycling, and swimming. And so I buy these very expensive road bikes, and I lock them up in my garage. And one by one, I've had 3 bikes stolen out of my garage. And so I get bigger locks, I bolt them to the walls, I do all kinds of stuff, and they still get stolen. And it's frustrating. And so I start to have this story about, there's people breaking into my house all the time. So I get this brilliant idea. I'm going to be like Batman or something, or a ninja. And I get a drop cam, those little Google drop cams, and I install one in the garage. I think this is perfect. I can keep an eye on what's going on down there. And you know how when you get a new piece of technology, you sort of keep using it a lot? When you buy a new car, you just drive it all the time just to drive it. Well, I was like that with the drop cam. And I was constantly checking, what's going on in the garage? Nothing. And then I was lying in my bed after a long day of parenting and writing and teaching, and I fell asleep in my underwear, which is part of the story, I guess. And I'm sort of a pacifist as a yogi, and I was feeling I have a little boy, and I didn't want to get a gun, but I was feeling like people are breaking into the house. I feel like I need some form of protection, so I got a baseball bat. I figured something just to scare people off with, right? And so I wake up after falling asleep watching Netflix in my underwear, and I decide I better wash my face, brush my teeth, go back, put myself to bed the right way. And I look on my phone, and there is this person going through my car in the garage. So I grab my baseball bat, not thinking that maybe I should put some actual clothes on, and I go flying down the back stairs into the garage, back deck, down the back stairs. And as I jump off the back stairs into the garage, I make some sound that karate-ish sound? That and the F word combined. It was not my finest moment. And as I do this, I'm realizing that there isn't anyone going through my car. And so I look on my phone and I see somebody going through my car, and I look up at my car and there's no one there, and I'm really starting to get confused out of this stupor that I'm in. And then I realized that it was actually recorded earlier and that the creepy person going through the car was me earlier that day. So I felt pretty foolish. And I went back upstairs, sort of dragging my baseball bat, and I get up to my bedroom. I'm thinking, God, I feel really foolish. And my phone buzzes, and it says, drop cam has spotted someone in the garage. And I look, and I see this crazy person in his underwear holding a baseball bat, screaming obscenities. And you're wondering, what does this have to do with Christianity? What does this have to do with the Bible passages that were read? What does this have to do with yoga? Everything. Because from a yogic perspective, so much of what we experience, we're reacting to a story we have. Right? We think of yoga as this physical thing, but the body is just a laboratory. And everything we encounter, we are reacting to not what is in front of us, but this whole story we bring. So I had this story that people are breaking into my garage, and I was responding and even seeing. I couldn't even see clearly when I looked at my phone. I was so convinced that there was this bad guy breaking into the garage and that I was going to scare him off, right? And that's what I saw. That was my reality for that moment. And then, of course, when I went downstairs and actually saw clearly, I felt sort of foolish. I felt like a crazy person. And that applies to almost every facet of my life. Almost every relationship is like that. The argument I'm having with you or the frustration I'm feeling with you is 99% not you. It's me bringing something in. And the drop cam is sort of like my yoga practice. What yoga teaches me is to be a witness, to become the observer. When you're in the middle of it, when you're the screaming crazy person with a baseball bat in your underwear in the garage, you can't see clearly. You can't think your way out of that. You can't navigate your way out. But when we practice mindfulness through yoga, meditation, Christian centering prayer, whatever it might be, we become the drop cam. And we get to sort of step back and look at what's going on. We get to see things from a different perspective. Does that make sense? And you get to see just how crazy you are. It's actually sort of frightening in the beginning. It's why a lot of people resist yoga. Or, you're supposed to pray and meditate and do all these good things every day. And we have this overwhelming desire to resist it, to come up with excuses as to why we can't. Because sometimes it's uncomfortable to look at how we behave. Right? In that gospel reading, and I love that gospel reading, because in that you can see exactly how I feel every time I roll out my yoga mat. Right? I come with all my body shame and guilt. I'm feeling just icky about myself. Sometimes I'm pushing it out and blaming it on the traffic jam or my boss or my son not cooperating or the fact that I'm still single and 47 and, all those stories, all that guilt, all that shame, what in yoga we would call a samskara, is there. And then there is this point when I become the witness with my breath, where I step back and I can see myself as Jesus saw that woman. Not as the woman who is the adulteress, but as something that came before. Right? The whole crux of Christianity, and I believe the crux of yoga, is forgiveness. To see something, not the story we have, but what was given before. Right? To go back to that Garden of Eden story. God looked and said, it was good. That's us. In yoga, we call it Atman. Atman. It's defined as uninterrupted joy and bliss. Basically, the Garden of Eden. And yet we feel like we've been kicked out of the garden. We feel all this guilt and shame. But when we find a way to pause things for even a moment, we see clearly. We experience forgiveness. And sometimes that comes from an external source, a teacher such as Jesus. But sometimes it comes from just dropping into your breath, dropping into your body, witnessing what's happening, and just letting go. You don't need to be fixed, right? You're not your stories. You're not your samskaras. So I hope that you will join us at some point, if you haven't already, on a Tuesday night. It's absolutely magical. Every time Reverend Jude or Ellen or one of the other priests comes up, I was telling Ellen this earlier. Last time she spoke, a couple women came up to me and said, "That was really cool that the Catholics allow women to become priests now." What I see is people who have a lot of trauma, a lot of baggage from their Christian past, finding their way back into church to do yoga because it's safe, right? And then they see a priest rolling out a yoga mat, and they realize that it's not an either-or thing, right? You can do both. And not only can you do both, they can complement one another. So I hope you will join us. I'm really sad that Reverend Jude couldn't be here today. I'm so proud of the community he has created here. Namaste.